What happens when we feel stuck or just burnt out? How do we dig deeper to find the energy and motivation to move forward? Today, we'll learn how we can find the strength to dust ourselves off and not only survive, but truly thrive. Welcome to the Women's Leadership Today podcast, a feature of Women's Leadership Today. I'm your host, Michelle Myers. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Wendy Meadows. Wendy started her professional journey as an attorney and has helped hundreds of families navigate the worst periods of their lives. Wanting to do even more for the women's community, Wendy began her path as a health and wellness coach, and now she is the best-selling author of the book Sparkle and Grit. Wendy helps women avoid burnout, find their grit, and move through life's challenges. Wendy, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great way to start a Monday, right?
Absolutely. And before we really dive in, I always like to ask our guests if they can tell us a little bit about the professional and personal journey. And as I mentioned, you have both a law practice and a health and wellness coaching business. So, how did you get to where you are and doing both?
Yeah. Well, it really has been quite a journey. And I think to some of my more recent followers, they think, oh, this just happened overnight. And in fact, it's been like an 8-year baby step journey of doing piece after piece. But long story short, I graduated law school in 2005, and I was a family law attorney for quite some time. And as family law attorney, that meant I was a litigator. I was a mediator. I represented children, all the things, but helping moms, dads, husbands, wives get divorced. And I did that for a really, really long time. And in 2016, I accidentally fell into a health and wellness coaching business. I didn't really mean for it to happen. It just kind of did. And I really, really enjoyed it. Like I thought I was just going to have like 2 or 3 clients and kind of help people. And oh, wouldn't this be neat? And then it grew pretty big and it grew pretty fast. And that experience taught me I had something more to give. And I wasn't meant to always be just, and I hate saying just a family law attorney because I feel like that takes away from all of my good friends and colleagues who are family law attorneys, because it's not a just, it's actually a huge, huge, weighty job. But it wasn't the job that was for me. So I took the parts I liked, and I kept the parts I liked, which is family law mediation. I actually had a mediation this morning because I really enjoy helping couples resolve their disputes efficiently and cost effectively. So I still do that. I still represent children. But with the health and wellness piece, I worked for another company at first, and I was like, wait a second, I'm really good at like the counseling, especially of other women and the coaching of other women and building them up. So I got certified in life coaching, and I've been really building that business now for several years. And that's the short answer. That's the long short answer of how I am where I am today.
Well, it sounds like your work as a lawyer sort of helped influence your desire to get into the health and wellness space.
Definitely, definitely. Being a burnt out and tired and lethargic lawyer, I wanted to adopt some better practices for myself and, for myself and my own health. But in turn, it did actually end up having a positive effect on my clients as well.
Well, in the beginning, I did mention that we'll talk about what we can do when we're feeling burnt out. But with juggling basically two full-time careers, what do you do personally to avoid burnout?
Right. And I said this recently too, like not one of us is immune from burnout.
Mhm.
We will still experience it, even if we have all the tools and even if we put all the tools into practice. Like even like I have like the very best tools and I still feel burnt out at times. So just for your listeners to understand that like this is something that we have to adapt and grow and keep working on consistently. But my main ways of keeping burnout at bay for me really, really boil down to my morning routine. And my number one rule, which is I have to wake up before my children. Because if I wake up after my children are awake, like I won't have that one-on-one meaningful one-on-one like myself time with me in the morning that really dictates how my day will go. So in order for me to keep burnout at bay, I wake up before my children. I have some quiet time where I'm reading, reflecting, journaling every morning. And then I also, when I journal, I decide who I want to be that day
Oh,
and
interesting.
what does that look like.
I like that.
So that is integral. That is integral to making sure I show up each day how I want to show up. And then in my working out, like I've worked out pretty much every day consistently since mid 2015. And if I'm stressed out, like I can lose all my stress, I can like sweat all the stress out, on a run or during yoga or something else. But that is also when I get injured and I can't work out, like all the other like signs of burnout definitely rear their ugly heads.
I really like that idea of starting your day with journaling what you want from your day. It's sort of like you're setting the intention
Exactly.
for that day and your outlook. I really like that. I actually think going to adopt that myself. And I understand if I don't get my morning run in, the rest of the day just isn't set up the same as it would be otherwise. Well, we talk a lot about grit on our program and how grit is, when we're burnt out, when we're feeling down, like grit is how we dig deep and keep going or pull ourselves up. And you wrote a book with a title that I love, Sparkle and Grit. Love it. Yes,
Here
there
it
you
is.
go. There you go. Sweater to match too. Love it. And Wendy, what was your motivation for writing the book, and what are you wanting your readers to take away from it?
So I've always been a writer. I always knew I would write a book one day, but when I was a kid, I thought it was going to be fiction. And
Hmm.
it turns out I am not a very good fiction writer. And I say that with love for myself. Like I'm not the best at fiction. However, when I was doing this health and wellness business, I would start to share online. And I found a lot of power in sharing my vulnerability online and hearing a lot of Me Too's, hearing a lot of other women, especially moms, like working moms, like, oh my gosh, she gets me. Oh my gosh, she knows me. And I would share, like, the more I shared online, the more empowered I felt. And the more I felt like I was like helping like my fellow comrade person also in the trenches with me. And so I realized like maybe I wasn't a great fiction writer, but I'm pretty good at nonfiction in terms of sharing my story. Then as I started coaching and I really enjoyed the coaching process, like coaching can be really expensive. Coaching can be expensive for some people I really want to work with and they can't afford a coaching package with me, but I still wanted them to reap like all the benefits of what I would teach in coaching
Mm.
or coach like in a coaching program. So essentially the Sparkle and Grit book would be if someone if they do all the work, I call it grit work. If they read it and they feel heard and they feel understood and they feel validated with the way I wrote it, is I wrote it very conversationally. And the number one piece of feedback I get is like, oh my gosh, Wendy, do you have a video camera in my house? If they do that in the grit work, then they have started like
Mm.
self-coaching themselves like, on the process. And I think it's a really great way for people curious what coaching is like or curious to dive deep in personal development and actually see some amazing changes. Like the book is for them.
And what are some of the biggest challenges um, that your clients are faced with, or what are some of the biggest changes that they're wanting to make? And that could be either personally or at work.
Oh goodness. All right. If I had to boil them down, I think the biggest challenge a lot of my folks face is the constant battle and like seesaw thoughts of am I enough? Am I enough? Am I enough? Am I enough at work? Am I enough at home? Am I like that's huge. And just making sure when they're at work, they're 100% at work. When they're at home, they're 100% present at home. Many of my clients feel like they are not present at home or they are so burnt out and tired at the end of the day, they have nothing left. They have nothing to put into their family.
Mm.
Not only aren't they putting into them, they're actually like they're still on their phone, they're still checking email, they're
Yeah.
still doing all this stuff, and they're not with their kids. And they constantly feel like they're just like running, running, running and never getting anywhere. So I would say it's like the constant struggle. Am I enough? Am I present? I don't even or who am I? So that's number two. Number two is like, I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't know how to have fun. I don't know what makes me excited. I don't know, like, or I work so hard. Like I work so hard. I put myself through school. I did all these things. I have the house. I have the husband. I have the babies. I have the dog. This doesn't feel like I thought it would,
Yeah.
right? Like what gives? And then another big one is, especially for my attorneys, that they are not as efficient as they could be at work,
Oh,
meaning they are not billing the hours they're supposed to be billing that their bosses need them to bill, and or they're not capturing their time effectively, meaning that they're working and they're billing, but they're not actually catching it on their timer, which means that all that hard work is for nothing, and it looks like they're lazy even though they're not, and they're essentially, I mean, it sounds sort of harsh, but they're stealing from the firm in a way because they're preventing money that they are like the firm is paying them, right?
yeah.
The firm is paid by the clients, but if we're not adequately billing the client as we should be, we're kind of stealing from the firm. So like those are the three buckets I think of where I help people a good amount.
And do you think these different feelings have been sort of with us for a long time, or are they more reflective of where we are today? You talked about not being present at home or at work, and so many of us have really blended spaces now as we're working and living in the same space.
I feel like there's so many layers to that question. So like going most recently and then a little further back. Most recently, I think COVID was a big awareness tool to realize, oh my gosh, I can do my work and my job from home pretty much just as effectively as I can in the office. And then as a lot of employers are having their employees come back in the office, now there's, I think, resentment and frustration from parents. Like, wait, I used to be able to do all these things and now I can't. So now they had more time and we had this beautiful gift and now it's gone.
Hmm.
So I think that's part of it. And that leads to overwhelm, especially when you see, wait a second, we're being inefficient. Like in some cases, like this is just inefficient. Like, okay, I understand I need to come to work sometimes, but can we like work things out a little bit? So I think it's a little bit of that. But I also think it's just, with technology that we are available all the time and we can be available all the time. We can work all the time, no matter where we are, like whether
Absolutely.
we're like driving at first thing in the morning, last thing at night. And that's not what our parents had to deal with. Our parents, they came home from work and they were home. There was no email to check. There was nothing else to really do other than just be home. And I say all the time, it's like, I don't remember my parents having it this hard in different ways. And then those of us too who are raising children, worrying about raising children also in the technology era.
Yeah.
So I think in this day and age, there's just more to worry about. And we're not just concentrating on, oh, our child is home. Let's do homework and make sure they go to practice and eat a good dinner.
Yeah.
It's just there's so much information out there and we're being bombarded all the time. I think it makes it so hard to be present in the moments that we're in.
With the technology, it is hard to turn off and disconnect from that. Yeah, because I always have my phone with me, and it's very difficult to not be tempted to look at my work email, even if it's not what our employers expect. I just so innate now, to always be monitoring everything going on. It is very difficult to let go. And so when women come to you feeling like they are at the end of their ropes and just burned out, what are some of the first steps you advise that they take to kind of get back to feeling like themselves again?
Yeah. So like there's definitely different like pillars along the program, but one is adopting a morning routine. Like
Mm,
number one is like, even if morning routine is just waking up before your children and having some coffee by yourself, like period. And then to like, and even if some of my clients have a morning routine, I'm like, okay, well, how can we like make it one step better? How can we like add in one more thing? I also advise that they do not check their work emails or that they don't even like look at their phone when they wake up. So wake up, don't look at your phone. That they need to get their morning routine and stuff first before they look at email, before they're on social media or anything else. So like really protecting that headspace in the morning, really deciding how I call it. And I have a journal where I do the same thing, but when we're thinking about who we want to be that day, we first need to think, okay, well, what's my big event of the day? Like, so for example, if like today, the big event of the day is the podcast, it's okay. The big event is the podcast. And who does Wendy want to be? She wants to be energetic, articulate, creative, responsive, so those are the adjectives of who I want to be today. So I have my clients do the same the same exercises. So they're also showing up as who they want to be. And then we start to layer in, well, what does fun look like? Because a lot of my clients have forgotten what fun is look like, or where do we need to focus on work or time and efficiency? And I'm also noticing another thing with a lot of my clients is they all want to know, like, what's the other thing out there waiting for them that they don't know what it is yet? Because they're probably having the same questions I had, like, okay, family law is great, or like whatever career they're in. This is great. This is fun. But I think there's something else, or I think there's something more. And I just need to like wrap my hands around what that is. It might not be a side career or a side hustle or anything. It might just be, I'm missing out on this piece that really feels like me and I want to get back to her. So it's helping the clients figure out that missing piece.
Okay, that's interesting because it seems like it'd be hard to look at what's out there next when we're so dialed into what's surviving what's in front of us right now.
But it makes it so much easier. Like when we get excited and we have this other thing that we're excited about, and it might even just be one of my clients wants to write a book. It might be, actually, I have that right now. I have a client who, she is in love with fiction writing, and she gave up writing for like the last year for a host of reasons. And she, like, the more we talked, like, she just kept talking about writing and writing, writing, even though that's not why she hired me. I'm like, I think we need to go back to your daily writing practice. And she has. And because of that, and this is what's really cool, when you find that thing that makes you tick, your energy becomes 10x. So even though it
Oh,
feels like
definitely.
you're adding more, when you're actually excited to jump out of bed and you have this like different look on life, like everything becomes easier.
I 100% agree. When you have that new project or that new thing that you're excited about, it really does energize you and it really fuels every other aspect of your life.
Yep.
And I have a question I want to ask. Do you find that burnout affects womenly different than men typically, or do you find both men and women sort of handle it the same?
That's a good question. I see I see it in both women and men. I see it in both places. I especially see it in men who have like a 50-50 role in terms of raising kids. But even if they don't, like, it definitely affects the men too. They might just not be as self-aware.
Hmm.
So I notice with women, we're a little bit more self-aware of what these feelings are and why. The men don't always feel it the same. I also, or they might not be as intuitive to what this stressful feeling is. And and it's interesting because like with men, I'm speaking with like a very broad brush here. So like
No,
this
I
is
understand.
a very, very generalized term, because I don't want to offend anybody. But like I'll use like I'll use my personal example of me and my husband, right? So my husband is definitely burnt out, and he's burnt out, but like his burnout is, I would say, 99% work focused, because he puts everything he has into his job, and he does look at his phone when he wakes up and when he goes to bed, and he is, even after the workday, when all our family goes to bed, he's still online working. So he's 100% burnt out because of work. And I don't think he's as burnt out from, and so I would say if we had a pie chart and we looked at why is my husband burnt out, I would say most of that pie chart would be work. I think with women, typically, since we carry more of the mental load and more of the
Mhm.
domestic tasks, even if we do give some up, it's, even if like me and my husband, like we're pretty domestic tasks, we're very equally divided. But when it comes to the person who's in charge of doctor's appointments and this for our kids and scheduling for our kids and our social scheduling and this, and worrying about social media and what devices should our kids have and not have, and what rules should we have, and the teachers still reach out to just usually the moms, even though both the mom and dad is on there. And so it's like that constant like thing all the time. Like women are burnt out, but it's not just solving the one piece of the puzzle. Like my husband's piece of the puzzle, if I could help him with it, if he would listen to me, is, his own
Yeah.
personal little search. But for a woman, it's like our pie chart of why we're burnt out has like 100 pieces
Yeah.
to it. So I it, it's just different.
No, I agree. You talked earlier about people reading your book are asking if you have a camera in their house, and I'm thinking the same thing. And like my pie chart and your pie charts are pretty much the same. Because you're right, because we work full time, and yet it again, not in every household, but oftentimes it is us, the women, as the moms, who hold on to all the different things, the appointments, the teacher conferences, are the little ones getting their homework done? Why aren't they getting, the A in the class and whatnot? So it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Well, Wendy, well, I want to thank you for coming on with us today. And we definitely just, really scratched the very surface of this topic. And I think so many of us do feel so overwhelmed, burnt out, and just running on empty these days because we are juggling so much. And like we talked about, those lines are just blurring more and more between where does our work end and where does our personal life start. So, as we wrap up, what advice would you give us for setting ourselves up for success in the new year?
Yes. So it really boils down to that thing we've talked about twice, already a little bit. But if your listeners, like each morning, they don't, do not like plunge into this thing where they have to do all the things come January 1, like a new workout routine and nutrition plan and this and that and this and that. Really just every morning take, you know, a minute and decide, okay, like even maybe while they're in bed, like do a scan of their body, think of how they're feeling and say, okay, what's my big event of the day? Okay, it's this, maybe it's a huge presentation at work, or it's asking my boss for a raise, or I have to have a difficult conversation with my husband tonight because I found out some bad information, like whatever it might be, like, but there's going to be a big event, and just have your listener really think about who does she want to be? Who does she want to be in that, and really visualize it. And the beautiful thing, and then when she does this, is she gets to experience it first when she visualizes it and future plans for it. Then when it's happening, she's like, wait, I've already like done a stage rehearsal for this. I've done a rehearsal. So it's that much easier for her to be to not only be, to be present, to be the person she wants to be. And if it's like a beautiful moment, to like really get to live in that beautiful moment, knowing she planned for it. And then the next day, when she thinks also, hopefully she has a gratitude practice, thinks about what she was grateful for the day before, she gets to experience it again. So really just being mindful in terms of who does she want to be? How does she want to show up, and how does she want to live her life in that way? And like, just really concentrate on that day by day, as opposed to getting too big, just really who she needs to be that day.
Yeah, and that's such a simple and easy thing to do. And like I said before, I really like that idea. And I think I'm going to try to start doing that myself. Journal, just take a couple moments and just sort of set that intention. Who do I want to be today? How do I want to show up for both my work and my family? So thank you for that tidbit.
You're welcome. And I'm happy to send you, I have like a PDF that I can send you. I'm happy to send that to you, or if your listeners want it as well, and they can use it as well, so they can do the same thing.
Oh, that would be wonderful. If you could, that would be wonderful. Thank you. All right. Well, Wendy, I'd like to thank you again for joining us. And I'd also like to thank all of our listeners for joining us. We do release 2 episodes a month, and they're available to watch on YouTube. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite streaming services. And make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. All right. Thank you. Thank you again, Wendy.
Thank you for listening. The Women's Leadership Today podcast is just one feature of the Women's Leadership Today community. We empower women to advance in their career through targeted professional development learning experiences and resources, such as live and on-demand courses, customized training solutions, up-to-date publications, and more. Visit womensleadershiptoday.com to join our community and take your career to the next level. Together, we can empower women everywhere to lead, innovate, and inspire change.